1 and 2. Outlook not good. Keeping this hand full of removal, and hopefully that actually translates pretty well, but we'll see. My mana situation looks good on the bright side. Yeah, a lot of the hands with these control decks, especially in game 1, end up kind of looking like this, where it's like I have 3 cards that are good against a specific set of decks, and then I have a counter spell, which may or may not be good. Yeah, and you just gotta hope that your cards line up, basically. My opponent, the Stray Cat. Cats are like creatures, right? So they probably have some creatures in their deck. Making me feel a little guilty here for, like, killing a stray cat, you know, but it must be done. Port Town. If this is blue-white mid, I'll be pretty excited, because I do want to play that matchup. I want to see how much the Jeskai stuff actually changes it. Instead of Grixis, because I played a lot of the Grixis versus blue-white matchup. And this matchup was one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to change things around in my deck, so see how this goes. My opponent's Copter Flooded. I kind of wish I had that Anticipate last turn, but, like, the more you wait on Anticipate, kind of the better it is anyway. Gideon, well, I should probably counter that. Alright, so far so good. Our counterspell actually traded up. So at this point, I'm worrying about things like Avacyn. I'm also kind of concerned about, like, you know, what if this Anticipate gets Spell Quellered, and then I Lightning it, and then they Rattle Chains it, or whatever. I'm always looking to avoid sequences like that, because those are the ways that you lose. So I'm going to pick up this Scatter, even though it's not a land drop, because I would like to stop Avacyn if possible. So land ET being tapped is kind of a tilt, because now our shields are down, and we can't stop, like, another Gideon. Inspector is a thing. I feel like they should maybe crack their clue and try to find another creature, but this is also legit. Alright, pitching a Snare, which is, like, kind of good for me. It's not the worst thing ever. We're just going to pop that Inspector right now. I could wait and try and get a juicier Radiant Flames. That's really bad. It's not really bad. I mean, I can Flames Lightning to clear. And I think it's the same either way if I, like, try and Flames for 3 off the hub and then Lightning. Alright, shields down again. Let's see how punished we get. Obviously, the clue must go. Selfless Spirit. Crew up a Copter. And get to sift through an excess land, which is pretty good for them. And our land ETB's tapped, which is not ideal. Not ideal. I want to anticipate main here in case I pick up another bombardment. And this is like... This is a big deal right here. The fact that I'm casting Anticipate and I'm just, like, snapping off Gear Hulk over Glimmer, even though I already have a Gear Hulk. Like, that is very telling to me. Like, I don't want... Like, the way the games play out, I just don't want to chain card drawing spells. I just want to jam Gear Hulks. So, we're going to try and do that. Our opponent's going to hit us with, like, some copters and stuff, but we're going to try and Gear Hulk, pick off some of their stuff. They're going to have a lot of things lying around still, but we're not going to try and clean up all of it. We're just going to try and clock them before they can actually get anything going. Yay, negates. Alright, so the question now, since if their creature was not a Selfless Spirit, I would probably hold the Hulk just to try and nab the Thopter, but in this case, I think it's just better to kill the Spirit right now before they can crew, because the Spirit's going to be able to protect their the Copter anyway. Thopter Copter. So, here we go. Let's see if we can race. Well, they found another snare. It's not the worst thing in the world. Now we have Gear Hulk Counterspell, which is pretty sweet. And they're not doing anything, so we're going to Gear Hulk Anticipate. I think it's Tower. I've generally just liked playing out my excess lands with this deck. Like, you don't have any filtering. There's no, like, Cathartic Reunion or Jace or whatever. Do I actually care about that? Anyway, yeah, so, like, I like playing out my excess lands because, like, what if I draw Glimmer into Glimmer or something along those lines? I'm going to want to have all of my lands in play. So even though on my opponent's turn I might run out my Negate and Bombardment and be Hellbent, and, you know, then they know that I don't have any spells, it doesn't really change what they're doing anyway because they're so strapped for resources, too, that they can't afford to play around anything anyway. But back to reality here. Do I want to negate this negate on my tower? It's a question of whether or not my negate is actually going to counter something on their turn and how relevant this tower is, especially once I use my negates, then I'm only going to have a bombardment, and that's going to get me up to 4 energy. I think I just do this. It's not about, like, what's going to happen next turn specifically, because the game's going to go on for a few more turns. I'm more so worried about whether or not this negate is going to be able to actually trade for something. So it might look like this tower is not of much importance, but all it takes is 1 spell, and then it is pretty decent. And if my opponent does deal with my Gear Hulk, I mean, obviously if I had a negate, I could just negate the snare, but if my opponent does deal with the Gear Hulk in some other way, I'm not sure how, but if they did, then I would probably want the tower. So yeah, now the tower's looking pretty good, even though I could have negated the snare, potentially. Anticipate is basically the perfect card because it's a spell that triggers tower that replaces itself. Think I just want Scatter. I don't know. Maybe I do want Nahiri. I don't think I can really play Nahiri this turn, though, which is sad. I think I want Nahiri. Scatter deals with one thing, but Nahiri is just this thing that pressures my opponent, so. If I get Avacyn here, it's bad, but okay, they just concede. Fair. Firm, but fair. Alright, so I like Weavers. I like the Frags. I wasn't sure how many negates I actually wanted in this matchup. Linval is pretty good. I definitely don't like Flames. Glare is okay. Yeah, Glare is actually good. I was kind of torn on how many scatters I wanted in this matchup, too, when I was playing Grixis, because there are games where they're just playing, like, Gideons and Avacins, and 3-mana counterspell is actually great, but then there are the games where they just get under you, and scatter is atrocious. And then, I'm not sure how much spot removal I actually want, because now I kind of have 12. And that seems high to me, but Lightning is definitely the better one. Do I just cut like 2 bombardments? That seems silly. Like, there are a lot of people playing this deck that are going to cut some of their smaller stuff and then try and go big with like Lancers and Bruna and stuff. And at that point, the card drawing and the cancels are all really powerful. Yeah, maybe I just cut all the bombardments. There's a pretty big potential here for me to just be stuck with clunky cards and not be able to interact early enough. Hopefully that's not the case, but... The important lesson here is that even if they do keep all their low-end stuff in their deck, the games don't play out the same way every time. There's no guarantee that they're going to go 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to need a bunch of early removal to interact. But, like, it's kind of like, what is the spread of stuff you need against the average game? And sure, maybe when you're on the draw, you can have a little bit more removal than you otherwise would because you're more likely to be under pressure even if their draw is not good, just because they get to play first. But still. Alright, so Copter comes in under negates. We have this Linvala that is going to be really tough to cast. Spirit is definitely the card that I didn't want to see because it actually protects their Copter. This is kind of not bad, actually. Because if they sack Spirit, we just choose 0 on the Lightning and end up with some energy. Could be useful if we draw a tower. And then this is just like a better way to kill their Spirit. So I'm pretty used to playing Anticipate main phase. This time I'm definitely not going to because I have Negate and they have Gideons in their deck. And we picked up the card that we would want to Anticipate into anyway. So, beautiful. Alright, that's a beat. That is a beat. Spirit's Deist, where my Weaver's at. Weaver would have been pretty bad for me, actually. It's pretty great. Well, I can Nahiri minus to kill the Copter. Doesn't sound great. Do I want a Hub or a Needle Spires? If I play Nahiri next turn off Islands, then... am I going to just use 4 mana on turn 5 so I can play Spires? I mean, I definitely want one of these lands so I can cast Linvala on 6. Yeah, I'll take Spires. This might work out poorly. Yeah, best of both worlds. So this is strictly a tempo play because I'm kind of under the gun here. Gonna take out their copter to stop their looting, and then they're just gonna attack down my Nahiri, but that's okay. I'm at 14 and facing down 7 points, assuming they have a follow-up creature to crew the copter with, so I definitely need to act here. Need to do something. Don't sack your spirit. Don't do that. That will not work out well for you. Okay. I don't know if they're just messing with me or what. Now what? I guess this is the spot where they're pretty safe to just jam Gideon because my shields are down, and if they do that, things are looking pretty bad for sure. Or we'll just sit here and not move. I don't know what's happening. To think that this Nahiri could have been a third tower. I've liked Nahiri so far, but tower would arguably be better in this situation. I think Linvala is probably going to save me this game. Especially if my opponent has Gideon. Although, I'm not sure if Linvala will save me from Gideon. It might. If they go Gideon token, I guess I would need something to do next turn. And then maybe I can drop Linvala, get a buffer, or Linvala down their Gideon. Their Gideon might be at 6 loyalty at that point, which is pretty scary. But we have Needle Spires too, we have Gear Hulk. I want to play. Let me play. What is happening? I'm like kind of in a not so great spot if my opponent has Gideon, and now I just have to get slow rolled to find out whether or not they actually have it. This is painful. I just want to know. I just want to skip to the back of the book, you know? I want to find out how the story ends. I'm so sad. Oh, we're doing it. Alright, another copter's a thing, and we picked up a lightning. Cool, cool. It's actually a kind of weird spot, too. Well, not anymore, I guess, because they played Inspector, but it's kind of weird in that if they crewed copter with Spirit and I lightninged it, they would sack a Spirit, and then if I Linvala, I would not get the 3/3. But now this is the same deal where we end up getting some energy. So 7 energy, no real way to actually translate that as of right now, but we'll get there. Or one of us will die before then, one or the other. Alright, so they're down to Stasis Snare. So pretty clearly they have another removal spell in their hand if they're just chucking mages and snares and stuff. Huh. Well, I could just like fragmentize. But I think I just want to jam Linvala this turn. I would hate to just spend my turn killing a copter when I could play a 6 mana card. So let's do this. Let's gain some life. Let's make our opponent use some removal spells, and then we can start killing their board. So they traded Selfless Spirit for a 3/3, effectively. They sacrificed that so I wouldn't get a 3/3. And now they're just passing? What happened? Just Avacyn time? That's it? So if they do have Avacyn and I fragmentize the copter, they can just crew it and then play Avacyn. And sure, I can Gear Hulk lightning down the Avacyn, but that's not great. And they just untap. Wild. So no Avacyn and no removal spell. I would imagine that they wouldn't keep Reflector Mage over Snare because of things like Gear Hulk. Like, they definitely don't want to Reflector Mage that. And I guess if I was at 7, then maybe it was fine. And the fact I had Linvala is just kind of throwing a wrench in their plans. I don't know. Either way, now I'm free to fragmentize a copter without any fear, really. So I'm probably going to Gear Hulk end of turn into Anticipate. Herm. This game has certainly been easier than it probably should have been because I haven't seen any like Spell Quellers, Negates, Void Shatters, Gideons, like any of this stuff that's really good against me. Did draw 3 Copters, but they're actually not that great in multiples, so. Especially in these kind of creature-like decks that don't have any token generators outside of Gideon. And Gideon is like the one card I'm trying to stop. What do, Stray Cat? What do? What is happening? The way they tap their mana makes me think that they don't have Void Shatter. Or something similar like that in their deck, because if they had that in their deck, they would be cognizant of trying to bluff it. Like, people generally only bluff cards that are in their deck. The thought never crosses their mind to bluff something that's not in their deck because it might be in their deck, you know? It's like... It's very strange how that works. Like, you know your exact deck list, but I don't. Alright, well now, instead of Anticipate, we're probably going to go with Harness Lightning on the Spirit. I think that makes more sense. Immolating Glare is interesting. I'm kind of interested in actually firing up the Needle Spires and getting in, but that would just trade with the other Copter, I think. And then I wouldn't have shields up for Negate Glare, so I think this is better. This might be a bad use of Glare because this Copter hit doesn't really mean that much to me. And it's possible that something happens, like, say, for example, next turn I attack, they play Avacyn, they get to block one of my things, and then they just get to hit me with Avacyn, and that could actually let them turn the corner, but... And killing this Copter is fine. Now I think the only thing they can have is Avacyn, which is why I want to fire up the Spires, because if they want to block one of my 5-power things, they still take 9. So now they're at 1. I have 3 lethal threats. Most of them are ones that they would just have to chump block. Sometimes it just works out perfectly. Yep, so this is the plan against this white-blue deck. You just go over the top of them. You want the Gear Hulks, Linval is great. End of story.